Hi, I'm Chief Rickard of the Town of Mount Hope Police Department. In April, as part of the budget process, without any input from local law enforcement or district attorneys, the legislature passed a series of criminal justice related laws. They call these laws reform. I call them craziness. Earlier today, local law enforcement, elected officials, and district attorneys got together in Goshen to present to the public what these changes are and how are they going to affect you. The following is that presentation.
All right, first thing I want to do, I'm Carl Dubois. I'm the Orange County Sheriff, past president of the New York State Sheriff Association. I want to thank you all for attending today, this very important media conference. I'd like everybody to put their cell phones on vibrate or silent so we don't have any interruptions. And the first thing I'd like to do is lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, which is right out there. Hands over heart, attention. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're having this media conference today to discuss some criminal justice policies were adopted as part of the New York State budget, despite having virtually nothing to do with the budget. By including in these changes in the budget bills, the public, even most legislators, were deprived of the opportunity to give effective comment and guidance on these important changes. This increasingly common practice, designed to force through major public policy changes without opponents having a fair opportunity to object or comment, should cease. And that's what we're going to discuss today. Now I'd like to introduce to you the Orange County District Attorney David Hoovler and the President of the New York State District Attorneys Association.
Again, I'd like to thank you all for coming today, particularly the police chiefs, the sheriffs, the law enforcement, and public officials. When you look at all the organizations that are represented in this room, there are over 200 law enforcement agencies represented here collectively speaking today about this important topic. I want to let you know how we're going to proceed. We will have a series of speakers, the first of which will be from police chiefs and police chief organizations that will talk about bail and discovery reform. Next, you will hear from a few sheriffs. Then you will hear from the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest union in the world as far as members for police. Then you're going to hear very quickly from the county executive here in Orange County, as well as Michael Sweeten, who is the town of Warwick supervisor. Also the president of the Association of Towns, Villages, and Cities in Orange County, to give you a unique insight into the cost of what these reforms are going to cost our county and our towns, all of which is unfunded. And then finally, at the end, you will hear from the district attorneys who are present here today, and at the end, we will take a few questions and answers. So to that end, I thank you for being here on such an important day. It is truly shameful that all of this was passed and none of us were hurt. Truly shameful that it all happened and none of us were hurt. Our legislators passed and voted on this without a single word from us. Well, now you'll get to hear what we think of what they passed. Sheriff?
So I recognize two Orange County legislators that are here. We have Rob Sassy, that represents the Wallkill area, Crawford area, and also Pete Toohey, who represents the Monroe area. Just want to recognize them. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Is there anybody else in the legislature here? We're good. Okay. Also, our Commissioner of Emergency Services, Brendan Casey. Thank you. I see you're right next to him. Okay, Carl Brabennick from our Assemblyman from Orange County.
Excuse me, we also have Darcy Miller. I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
Darcy Miller, okay. She's Commissioner of Social Services. Thank you. All right, the first speaker that we're going to have today is Joseph Sinagra. He's the chief of the Town of Saugerties Police Department, and he is representing New York State Association of Chiefs of Police and the Mid-Hudson Chiefs Association. Joe?
Thank you.
I want to thank all my brothers and sisters in law enforcement who are here today, our district attorney's offices that are represented here today, and especially the media. We're here today to talk about what's going to happen from January 1st, 2020. Our criminal justice system is going to go through a very large seismic change in the way that we do business. And unfortunately, this change was developed through policy at our state legislative level without any input, as you heard from law enforcement or our district attorney's offices. Our county execs and our county legislators were not involved in the process. There's unfunded mandates that have been placed on law enforcement that were never taken into consideration, and it's going to drastically affect the way that we do business. Now, some people today may characterize this press conference as fear-mongering. I'm here to tell you it's anything but. This is about life and death. This is about decisions that were made by our state legislature that's going to impact every citizen of the state of New York. The most serious part of the legislative changes that were made is that judges will no longer have the ability to take into consideration the dangerousness of a defendant when before them for the purposes of arraignment. Over 400 laws that once were susceptible to arraignment are no longer so come January 1st, 2020. And just to give you an idea, this is not about politics, but how serious this problem is. The #1 Democrat, who I consider in this state, who is the top legal person, the top criminal justice individual in the state of New York, Letitia James, our Attorney General, 3 weeks ago came out in an article in the Post opposing this current form of bail reform. In fact, Letitia James, our Attorney General, said that if the state legislature does not re-examine what they have done, if they do not fix it, if they do not change it, that come January 1st, 2020, our community members, the people of the state of New York, our residents must brace themselves for a major criminal justice disaster. That's coming from our Attorney General. This is very serious. This was done through policy, through budget, which is the wrong way that this was supposed to be developed. As a member of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police, I was present in Albany when we asked in writing to sit at the table to discuss bail reform, and we were denied that right. The district attorneys were denied that right. We are the individuals that are here to protect you, and that power of protection is being taken away from us by the state legislature. I am here to implore our governor, our assembly, and our Senate to please slow down. Let's take a look at what you've done here, and let's fix it before somebody loses their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We also have with us Assemblyman Colin Schmidt, who also represents Orange County. I'd also like to now introduce Chief Don Blasco from the town of Crawford, who is the president of the Orange County Police Chiefs Association.
Thank you, Sheriff, and welcome everyone. We are talking about some very important things, and people that will speak after me are going to talk about the process and the cost and the need for money. But really what really affects us here as a local police agencies is the fact that we're being forced to have big city problems being forced on small communities. We are losing a lot of tools out of our toolbox by this legislation. That 20-something-year-old young person with heroin that we can arraign, put in jail, and the Orange County Jail has great resources for drug prevention. We can call Darcy Miller's group to get them help, is being taken out of our hands because we are going to give someone an appearance ticket and send them on their way to go back and do the drug that got them in trouble in the first place. And we could just pray that it does not become a fatality. It is a sad day when we cannot give help. That is our job as law enforcement, and it's been taken out of our hands because we cannot use the system as it's designed. Obviously, we know that there's change that should have been made, but this drastic change is going to jeopardize the small communities that we enforce our laws and help every day. It's kind of sad also that all the years that I've been a police officer, for almost 28 years, that we have been working and improving our services to victims, and by one budget vote, they got rid of victim rights took the handcuffs off the suspects and put them on law enforcement. It's a sad day in New York. We hope that our legislator changes their mind and gives us some more tools to keep our communities safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Glasgow. As a former town and village justice, my comment is this, that legislators sitting behind a desk in Albany have taken away judicial discretion at the local level. Like I say, as being a former town and village justice, they have just taken any kind of reasoning away from any kind of arraignments and any kind of leverage that we would have with any kind of narcotic or drug treatment. And in the middle of an opioid crisis, they do this. Go figure. Now I'm going to introduce a good friend of mine from across the river, Dutchess County Sheriff Butch Anderson, who will speak on behalf of the sheriffs and the New York State Sheriff Association. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sheriff. If you look around us right now, you have some of the finest minds in law enforcement. The men and women that are represented here are second to none. They have a job to do. They've been following what their procedures are, accreditation, etc., in law enforcement. If this goes through, and it was forced through, without any input from any of the minds that are here today, it's going to be a disaster. What we have to look out for, the sheriff said programs. We have programs in our correction facilities to help people. That's not going to happen anymore. They're going to be released. And this is a sad day. They're going to be put out on the street come January 1st. What we have to look at is the victims. I don't think anybody even took them into consideration. We should ask the Assembly and the Senate up there in Albany, look and listen to the men and women in law enforcement. It's going to be a disaster for us. In my jail alone, come January 1st, approximately 179 men and women will be released. Our biggest problem, the opioids. Number 2, domestic violence. We're just going to be cutting these people loose. Discretion's gone. They took it away from us. You listen to the DAs when they speak and the chiefs, and you're going to find out what a big problem it is for us. We'd like to correct it. Our Senator Sue Serino is fighting for the victims up in Albany. She's not getting much help. So we've got to reach out to our Assembly, to our Senates, and we've got to let them hear us. Ladies and gentlemen, our job is to protect you, to do what's right, treat people the way you want to be treated. It's being taken away from us, and it's a bad thing. Thank you very much.
And I just want to clarify one thing. These two gentlemen in the Assembly that are here with us today, Carl Brabman and Colin Schmidt, voted against this legislation. Oh, well, voted against the budget where it was slid through. Okay. Next person I'd like to introduce, also a good friend of mine, very well known around Orange County police circles, is the Mike McGinn. He is the local president of the FOP from, I think it's Lodge 957. Okay, Mike, you're on.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it. I'm honored here today to be representing State President Mike Hesse from the Internal Water Police. He couldn't be here today. Just a couple of observations. Those of us that were cops in the 80s and 90s realized how bad things were before the cuffs were taken off the police and we were able to go out there and do our jobs. Those bad old days are coming back. Back when New York City was the homicide capital of the world, and it made New York State the homicide capital of the world. It's not going to stay that in the city. It's going to trickle its way up here, and we're going to have problems that are unimaginable with the implementation of these laws. Tonight I'm going to a rally up in the city of Newburgh. They are going to lay off 15 police officers, 15 to 19 police officers. That city's crime has been trending in the right direction. It's been going in the right direction between the layoffs of these police officers and these laws kicking in on January 1st. It's going to be devastating for that community. And these limousine liberals on the Upper East Side and Chappaqua, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's the people in Newburgh and the people in Middletown and the cities that need our help the most, that are going to suffer the most from these laws being pushed through without the input of DAs, sheriffs. It's incredible that this went through like this, and mostly the cops on the beat, on the street right here, the troopers, the deputies, the police officers, just trying to do their jobs are being further handcuffed from doing what they need to do. So I sure hope that our elected officials up at Albany, including some here in the Hudson Valley that voted for this measure, will come to their senses and realize that it's not good for this community. So, Sheriff, thank you very much. DA Hoovler, thank you very much.
Okay, this next person I am going to introduce really needs no introduction. He's our Orange County Executive, Steve Neuhaus, and he's going to speak about fiscal implications on the bill. Thank you, Sheriff.
It's great to see this huge turnout from law enforcement, all in solidarity here today. What this law has done is just create chaos in the counties in New York State. Most of the county executives and legislators back and support their sheriff's offices, their corrections, their local police, their DAs. It's created a complete giant question mark on where are we going forward. The ramifications from this and what this has created is a clear and present danger for not only the men and women that respond to emergencies, but to our society. So if what you see as the impacts from this are going to be measurable and unmeasurable. Measurable is we think in January you're going to let individuals go that are going to commit crimes that should be incarcerated. You're also going to see measurable things where people that have addiction issues that are getting treatment now and forced to get treatment are going to be let go on the street and either have overdoses themselves or fall back into the same lifestyle. You're going to also have unmeasurable results of this. So you're going to have sexual assaults that require victims, and you require a case to be built that's going to be fast-tracked because of this new law that is going to now force victims to either not come forward or the case to not be put in a timely fashion, allowing those people that are committing those crimes to continue to do bad things in our society. We have a system that works. We have a great district attorney and a sheriff's office across the river and up north and south, other great men and women here. There's something that can be done though today. We've met with senators and assemblymen. I've written them letters. I said the first victims that come to my office as of January 1st, if this is not repealed, I'm bringing them to your office. You're going to tell that father and mother why their daughter was sexually assaulted by somebody that should be incarcerated, or why that home invasion occurred when they could have kept that person incarcerated. They have a month and a half to call an emergency session of the state legislature, and they can put a pause on this. And if they want to reform bail, that's fine. But have the men and women that are experts, that are the experts in protecting our public safety at the table. And again, district attorney and sheriffs and all my friends in law enforcement, thank you for your turnout today.
County Executive, I apologize. One person I did not introduce was Supervisor of the Town of Crawford, Charlie Carnes. Okay, thank you for coming, Charlie. Appreciate it. Okay, I'd like to now introduce Supervisor of the Town of Warwick, I think the biggest town in Orange County, Mike Sweeten. He's President of the Orange County Association of Towns, Villages, and Cities. Michael.
So I do represent the 22 towns and 19 villages and 3 cities in Orange County. I'm here with Vice President Charlie Carnes. 201, our members have tremendous fears what this is going to do in our communities. Just in my community alone, I've had to budget up to $300,000 extra in my budget for potentially reallocating personnel, hiring new personnel, just to meet the demands of this legislation. Now, in the era of the tax cap, that's about 60% of my tax cap, so it doesn't even help me stay within a budget. It doesn't let me invest in the infrastructure in my community. And leaving aside the tremendous safety issues that this is going to present in my community, it mind boggles the local officials in this county and across the state as to how we're supposed to deal with this. We have great departments in this county, and they're going to do a great job, and they're going to do their best to keep our residents safe. But the state legislature and the governor have put all of our residents at risk, not only safety-wise, but also the fiscal health of our communities. We're not going to be able to invest in infrastructure, take care of our seniors, which they want us to do, and still be able to continue to function as municipalities. So we're urging our legislators to take a pause, talk to people that really live this every single day, know what they're doing, and let's do this in a very open process where we can understand the cost and the implications of what they're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Sweeten. I'd now like to call up to the podium the Putnam County District Attorney, Robert Kendi.
Thank you, everyone. I'm asking the governor and the legislature to do something for the law-abiding residents of New York State, and for those who are accused of crimes, and for those who are in correctional facilities. I'm asking that the governor and the legislature place a one-year moratorium on the implementation of new bail and discovery laws. In the present state, the laws do not reform anything, and they don't help anyone. Rather than speak generally, I'm going to give you 3 real-life specific examples that I've been involved with. A woman meets a man at a bar. Seems like a nice guy, but she eventually gets in her car and leaves. He follows her, flashes his lights, taunts her, starts screaming at her. She parks her car, runs to her apartment as quickly as she can. He takes a brick, smashes the back of her car window, pours alcohol in it, and lights it on fire. He screams, "I'm going to come back." Under the new bail law, this person, if apprehended, would not be allowed to be put in jail. He would not be allowed to have bail set on him. And under the new discovery laws, this woman's personal contact information would have to be turned over to this man. This is not reform, folks. This doesn't reform anything. It's dangerous. What I just told you is a fact. Another example. A drunk driver with a criminal record is so intoxicated that he veers off the road and runs over a father of 2. Kills him. He's got a record, and he's got a record of bench warrants, which means he hasn't come back to court in his prior criminal cases. If apprehended, that person could not have bail set on him. To make matters worse, that person is an undocumented alien. The odds of him coming back to court once he is released are 0. That's a real case. This is not reform. This is craziness. We've got to tell 2 kids their father's dead, and the guy who killed them got out immediately. Here's another example. When I was a defense attorney, I've only been a DA for 4 years. When I was a defense attorney, I represented a lot of young people who were heroin addicts. And after a while, I started to bother me. And I started telling the parents of these kids, if you're going to post bail, I'm not taking the case. Keep them in jail. They're tremendous heroin addicts. Keep them in jail. It's going to take 6 months or so for their brains to rewire. And at that point, they're going to realize they need some help. And I can do something with the district attorney's office to help them. Under the new law, starting January 1st, and defense lawyers all across the state do this. Under the new law starting January 1st, we can't do this anymore. So my heroin addict client is going to go right back out on the street and either die of a heroin dose, commit more crimes, or get into some trouble that's really, really bad because of his habit. And as people before here have said, it's not just law enforcement. Defense attorneys, we want to help our clients. I'm speaking as if I'm a defense attorney. I still feel the same way. We want to help these people. We can't anymore. It's crazy. So, now I went to St. John's University. I graduated in 1989. Andrew Cuomo's father spoke at my commencement address. And he also went to St. John's Law School. And he was a man that had uncommon common sense. And I'm asking the governor to talk to the legislature. Please, place a one-year moratorium on this law. Take a step back. Look at what you've passed. Look at what you're proposing. Look at what the consequences are going to be. And ask us to sit down in a room with you and help you craft a law that's useful and that helps criminals, the accused, and most importantly, helps the law-abiding men, women, and children of this state. They have to do it. I'm pleading with them to do it, and I'm glad the press is here because I need you people to report this. This can't be ignored. This is very serious. So please, get the word out. Let's have a moratorium. Let's put this thing on hold for a year. I know we can craft a law that works. Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney Pendy. I'd now like to introduce the District Attorney of Dutchess County, William Brady.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Before I make my remarks, I'd just like to underscore a very important theme because I think we're losing sight of something, and that is that no one on the part of the DA's Association or the police chiefs, to my knowledge, was ever opposed to bail reform or discovery reform. It's something that we knew had to come, and we knew we had to participate, we wanted to, and we wanted to help give insight so the net result would be a realistic approach to bail reform, discovery reform that would not only address the rights of the defendants, but address the right of the community and the victims to be safe in that community as well. But as we know, the bail reform was passed without any input whatsoever. The net result, and I speak frankly, is a result or a product of something that lacked total foresight and irresponsibility, or both, on the part of every legislator who voted for this law to pass. And I think that it's about time that we revisited the entire issue. Now, my colleague, Mr. Tendy, from Putnam County, illustrated a couple of examples, but I can take it one step further. Sheriff Anderson alluded to it because of the programming that takes place in his jail right now. Two very specific examples, domestic violence being one. Unfortunately, in my county in 2017, over an 8-week period, there were 4 domestic violence homicides. So we're very familiar with the consequences of domestic violence and what could happen if a judge doesn't have the authority to set bail. Right now, they do not. This is irresponsible. Senator Serino is presenting a proposed legislation to deal with this issue, but as of right now, it's not available to any of the judges. It has to be available because the potential for lethality occurs immediately following the incident. And between that time and a few days later is the time that most things happen. And it can be devastating, of course, to the victim. And yet the judges have been deprived of their right to adequately address that situation. And the same holds true for drug-dependent offenders. We're all concerned about the rights of the defendant because they're misdemeanor offenders, and my God, why should they spend a few days in jail? And I think Mr. Tendy alluded to that and explained that very eloquently. But the bottom line is, no one is addressing the needs of the community as well as the needs of the offender if they're released. Lack of foresight on the part of the legislature. Every one of these offenders who are in jail now and who are drug dependent, most of them misdemeanor offenders, who are going to be released, they're going to be released without programming. Why? Because the judge doesn't have the authority to order programming. So what's happening? They go out into the community. How are they going to get a fix? Because that's the first thing they want to do. They're going to commit a crime. So they commit another crime to support their habit, and who gets victimized? Well, fortunately and hopefully, a victim doesn't get physically injured and when they go out and they commit their crime. So that we're neglecting the needs of the offender, because if he gets his fix, if he's just been released from jail, the odds of him overdosing or dying are very high. Why? Because he hasn't had a fix in X number of months. And now he's going out and he's going to be taking the same dosage that he took before. So he's going to OD and he may very well die. And we know that because unfortunately Dutchess County has seen a great disproportionate number of deaths as a result of overdoses. So that has to be addressed as well. But just as importantly, of course, they're going to go out and they're going to commit crime. The judge has to have the authority to, under the new law, if it exists, mandate that this offender undergo screening to determine his drug dependency, and also have the authority to order him into rehabilitation therapy. That has nothing to do with warehousing the defendant because they committed a crime. We're dealing with his underlying problem. We have an opioid crisis in our county as well as across New York State. It has to be dealt with. And the community has to be protected as well. And the community under this new law will not be protected because they will continue to be victimized by the addict looking for proceeds so he can support his own habit. This cannot be allowed to continue. And we could go on discovery and the irresponsible way in which they're mandating that discovery must be provided within 15 days. And not only that, we're tough enough that we had to comply with our existing discovery laws, but the discovery laws have been doubled in terms of the information that the offender is going to be entitled to after January 1, and yet we're supposed to do it with the same staff. And the state has not provided 1 cent to help us implement new programming or hire additional personnel to address these needs. And we all know what they've done to the defense side, but I don't want to create comparisons because it would embarrass me. So therefore, all I can say is I hope that everyone gets the message that we're sending today, and I hope the legislature has a good common sense and good judgment to immediately address this issue and take the DA's advice and put a moratorium on this proposed legislation before it really has a serious and negative impact on our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, District Attorney Grady. Now for closing remarks, I'd like to introduce the Orange County District Attorney, Dave Hoovler, who's also the current president of the New York State District Attorneys Association. During the book.
Thanks, Sheriff Dubois, and thank all the law enforcement officials for coming out today, the elected officials, and hopefully our elected senators and assembly people are listening to what we're saying. It's a powerful statement when you hear Supervisor Sweeten talk about the cost to his community that the state has put on him and they've given nothing. And again, County Executive Neuhaus, there's a cost that's coming to this county that's unfunded also, that has been placed upon us by the state. But I want to go back to something that D.A. Grady said. There's not a district attorney or a police chief or a sheriff or anyone in law enforcement that wants anyone to spend a day in jail that they don't have to. We all agreed we needed to change a few things. But we were cut out of the process. So no one wanted to hear what I had to say. Now I hear every day, well, New Jersey has the same thing as New York. New Jersey, no, New Jersey doesn't. New Jersey threw millions upon millions of dollars to their reform. We got zero. New Jersey has risk assessment tools that judges and pretrial services are allowed to use to look at to determine if someone should be released. And if they are released, what services they need. The laws that they passed in New York, nothing. In New York, you can commit repeated misdemeanor upon misdemeanor upon misdemeanor upon misdemeanor upon misdemeanor, and you can't get bail. You can literally be a crime wave in your community, and you cannot be held in jail. You can be out on a felony and commit unlimited misdemeanors, and you still can't be put in jail. A couple real-life examples from this county that show how ill-thought-out this was. We have a terrible opioid problem in this county. And the police chiefs and the detectives and the sheriffs, when someone overdoses in this county, we treat it as a homicide. We try to look at it and determine where the drugs come from, and we try to hold the seller accountable. We had a case just this past month where someone was sentenced, or someone was put in jail, where they had sold drugs to someone and it caused a death earlier this year. They were charged with criminal sale of a controlled substance, as well as criminally negligent homicide. And they pled guilty. And they were put in jail on $250,000 bail. And the courtroom was filled with family members from their family, wanting accountability for causing the death. And I understand the person took the drugs willingly. But the family was there, and it mattered to them. In January, that person's going to be released, because it's pending sentence, it's going to be released, they're going to walk out. And if it happened in January, in the new year, you can't even ask for bail in that case. How House burglars, serial drunk drivers, drug dealers can pull up in front of this building with 25 kilos of cocaine, and you are going to walk free that day. We're still going to hold you accountable. We're still going to do our job. I cannot imagine the people that passed this law thought about those scenarios. If they would have passed something different. When it comes to discovery, our discovery laws needed some change. Everyone agrees. But what they gave us, again, not well thought out. And the fact is, they didn't give the police departments, the DAs, or anyone a dime to comply. And everyone knows, once you move north of the GW Bridge, the tax cap comes into play in our communities. The legislation was one size fits all. It was for New York City. It works for them. No one thought about the rest of us. The practical application of this is, the men and women standing here, the DAs, the sheriffs, the police chiefs, we're going to do our job. And we're going to hold people accountable, and we're going to do it right. When things go wrong, and things come crashing down, as they will, as the county executive said, this will be on the doorstep of those that pass this law. And what they have really done in this state and in our communities, they have put felons ahead of families, is what they have done. And I'm not saying that individuals charged with crimes don't deserve fair treatment. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, the criminal justice system has always been centered on the victim. And it should be centered on the victim, also considering the defendant. But when you shift it this far, people's personal contact information has to be given out, and the examples you've heard, we've swung too far. So on that note, I thank you for coming here. I thank the men and women for coming here. We can take a few questions. If the questions are legal, they'll be directed to the district attorneys. If they relate to any other aspects, the sheriffs and the police chiefs can handle them. So I'll open the floor up at this time.
Do you have an idea of how many inmates will be released from Orange County Jail come January 1st?
It's going to be over 100, but it's taking place now, from what I understand, where the judges are, somebody's court case is being called now, and the next court date goes into the new year. They're being ROR'd at this point. So but we look at, we're over 100, maybe 125, maybe more, but they're starting to be released right now.
How does the new law affect past offenses in terms of people that are out on bail, etc.?
They will continue to be out with the discovery obligations. It's a repeal of the old discovery law, so the new discovery obligations will be placed upon the prosecutor's office and the police to comply with them. And we will have to fulfill our obligations to do that and seek justice. And that is a costly endeavor, a very costly endeavor. As you heard, $300,000 just for the town of Warwick alone to be able to comply.
All right. Hearing no others, thank you all for coming. Have a great day.